Hey guys, this is Dex, and here today I've got the cold steel Kiridashi. And you know how this goes. You see a knife, it catches your eye, pretty soon it's in your basket, and then shortly after it's showing up in your mailbox, and so here we are. So this is a knife that's very different from other knives that I would typically get. It's just got some very unconventional features, unconventional appearance to it, and for whatever reason, it caught my eye, and so here I am to share some of my thoughts about it with you. There's a couple things about this that really stand out that I'll go through. This is a Taiwan-made knife, cold steel. It's got the triad back lock. It's FRN scales. It is a 2.5-inch long cutting edge on a modified Warncliffe blade. It's got a very short primary grind. It's a little thick behind the edge at about 30 thousandths. The blade stock is about 120, 125 thousandths. Uh, Given the position of the back lock, it's really a two-hand close. Carry is by this single position tip up right-handed clip, which is also one of the first things that's sort of unconventional about this. That clip is plastic. And it's indexed into the scales by this little step right here. It's pretty stiff. This material is not very aggressive, and so it gets in and out of the pocket pretty easily. And when it's all the way in the pocket, only about, I'd say, half an inch or so of this shows, and so it's pretty close to a deep carry. Not very obvious what it is when it's in there. I've seen a couple reports of this clip breaking. I can't speak to longevity yet. I've only had this for a couple months, um, but it seems like it's working pretty well for me right now. So the handle itself is really comfortable. It's got a little bit of a profile to it. The edges are well rounded. There's no sharp bits of the FRN left, so it's good fit and finish. It's quite a roomy handle. I get a full 4-finger grip. This 2-finger choil here gives me plenty of space to get on that. There's no hot spots when I grab it. This obviously, though, highlights the atypical or unusual blade shape, and this is that modified Warncliffe blade. The flat edge is nice for cutting or slicing things. The tip is nice for getting into, packages, materials, in particular with clamshells, where that plastic is really hard to get through that first bit. This is a dream for that. So with that short primary grind, the material does get pretty thick quickly, and so cutting through this way, if it's a stiff material like thick double wall cardboard, this is a harder knife to use that on because it tends to want to spread the material, and that makes it just a little bit more challenging to cut through. So that blade shape is a little bit polarizing. It's a very classic blade shape when you look at Kiridashi knives from Japan. This is a really typical appearance for it. Oftentimes chisel ground, even though this one is not chisel ground. Mostly fixed blades with a little saya or scabbard that fits over the blade for all sorts of things like wood carving and construction work and things like that. And so the third thing about this that's probably a little polarizing is the blade steel choice. Cold Steel went with 4116 on this. I see it often advertised with 4034 steel. Both are pretty budget, entry level steels with carbon content in the 0.5% to let's say 0.6% range. Something similar to maybe 420HC or OS 6. So a pretty budget entry level steel. That said, Cold Steel has used this on a number of other knives, and I would think has a pretty good handle on the heat treating for this to maximize its performance. And so I would expect that this is, among the best you can get with this steel. So for those of you who are still scoffing a little bit, maybe quoting knife steel nerds, I think Dr. Thomas has commented, and I don't recall where, I apologize, that the coupon for 4116 that he had, it may not be reflective of the steel. And so I would say rather than blowing this off, just ask the question, does it serve a purpose? Does it meet your need? And if it does, then great. And if it doesn't, I'm sorry. What steel it's made of, apart from bragging rights, doesn't make a great deal of difference. So I'll give it a shot. And at least for me so far, this knife has done what I've needed it to when I've carried it. So the other nice thing about 4116 is it's very easy to sharpen, which is good because this stud is unfortunately in the sharpening and cutting path, which makes it a little more challenging to get this onto a stone. Right here, you have to use the edge of the stone um, to get that blade down at the heel. That said, it does take a very keen edge and it sharpens very quickly because it is not a particularly high carbide steel. The carbides in it are on the softer side. There's a little bit of vanadium in this, but not enough to create a problem for sharpening. So those three things, the blade shape, the blade material, and the clip, those are the three sort of controversial things about this. Again, it's a bigger handle for the overall blade length, but it's a very comfortable handle. And I think it's a very functional, high utility blade shape that I've gotten a lot of mileage out of so far. A couple quick comparisons for size. Get your Article Delica. Again, this is, you know, similar blade length. The Delica is just a touch longer. When you look at sharpened edge, it's quite similar. Different ergonomics of the handle. Here's another similarly priced knife. The Delica is considerably more expensive than this is. This is the Ontario Rat #2, the smaller of the folding rats. This is, about a 4-inch handle, but again, you get another half an inch or so of blade length on this. So overall, again, different for sure. Two-handed close, plastic clip, 4116 material, sort of an atypical shape. So maybe doesn't appeal to everybody, but I've had a lot of fun using this knife and carrying it. And again, being very different, it sort of causes you to stop and look at it, appreciate the angular nature, the sort of beauty of the knife a little bit more each time you take it out to use it. So, any questions or comments, leave those below. Thanks very much for watching.